as you mentioned, it has been a weird trip. Quite a bit of polar opposites when it comes down to it. But then you look back on it over the years and go, oh, I see what I was getting then. You mentioned that earlier about, seeing what led you to where you are and what you've been doing. So, grew up in a family. Actually, my father was a Marine and wasn't on the plan for me. There were all kinds of other plans, but that's the way it ended up. And I never was quite sure why that started that way, but it set such a foundation of kind of a reverence for life, because there was always that 1 second you're there and the next you're not. My dad talked about that, over the years of friends he had lost and how close he had come over the time. So although, in most cases people think about the Marines and you get everything from heroes to baby killers. So you just kind of have to weigh it out and say where it is. But the whole thing, as much as people talk about, oh, it's about killing and everything else, it's really about preserving life and preserving what is believed in at the time. So that brings, to a learning that, took years to grasp. And we just talked about it a little bit, but to expand on it more, that what one person views as evil and terrible or dark is 100% light to another. Trust me, every person that went into battle that thought they were right and fighting for right, there was a person on the other side of the battlefield that was there because they knew it was right and they were fighting for right. So when we look at light and dark and good and bad and those various polar opposites of thought, it really helps to have that other perspective of what exactly has caused someone, say, to attack you or to come after you. And it was interesting, you say Aikido and what it teaches is really viewing and seeing that polar opposite and accepting, okay, this person has determined to stick that knife in me or hit me with that club or just punch me or whatever. What exactly have I done to deserve that? And not deserve that, that's not the right question, but what am I that causes that person to feel that I'm a threat or that I'm, somehow an energy that needs to go away? So in a lot of cases, Aikido is about where two things come together. How can we blend them? And how can the nage, the person being attacked, how can they see from the other person's eyes what's going on? Now, in a lot of cases, that's purely physical, okay, I represent something that they can't relate to or that is really causing a very visceral response in them. But in a lot of cases, as you practice, you realize this is energetic too. And your energy represents something that is counter to their view of the world. So as I was working through, my Aikido journey and trying to learn this, it kind of became apparent. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, there's more to this than just physical practice. And granted, most good Aikido instructors are out there, Aikido instructors that are following kind of the pure view of it, realize there's more, that this is a spiritual practice, that you're connecting with the divine, you're connecting with the divine in you and the divine in everyone else to blend the energies and to achieve peace, achieve a stasis where everyone feels safe and that it's no longer necessary to be an aggressor or to see me as something that is really against you. that, of course, led to some energy studies. And I'm like, okay, there's got to be a little bit more to this. I better learn a little bit more. And like Esteban, I looked at Reiki because Julie, as you mentioned, it had some Reiki. And I said, well, let's see what this is. And that was interesting. And then started working with a lady who actually taught me Reiki that was doing some Hawaiian healing. And I'm like, wow, this is really, really interesting too. But I found through all of that, it was really about how does this energy come through in a way that's going to be beneficial to the other person. And like Aikido, if I'm just forcing my energy pattern onto you, I'm not really blending with you. I'm bashing against you, and that didn't really relate. So it led me to the study of shamanism. And the very, very basics of shamanism is essentially, Esteban was talking about it, we've all kind of talked about it, that everything is energy. We've talked a lot about people, and I have my energy and you have yours, but Julie talked about it with the horses, that they have an energy that they bring. Everything brings you an energy and brings an energy with it. We're all neutrons and atoms and electrons, and so we're all the same thing when it comes down to it. So we all bring energy. The other core component of shamanism is that as a practitioner, you need to keep yourself open for the energy that's going to come forward. Because you're working with someone, you're working just like you and Julie worked. You're working with, in that case, Julie was working with Pam's energy. Horses may or may not be something that Julie worked with or understands or anything else, but that energy came through and means something to you. And so it stuck with you, it stayed with you. So maintaining that hollow bone nature where you can bring through whatever energy wants to approach the person allows a purity that removes my preconceived idea of good, bad, right, wrong, and all that, and allows the energy to come through that's going to be right for the person. And what might be incredibly scary to me could be 100% natural to that other person. It could be something that is so natural to them that they are immediately able to heal and work through this. That's true on all parts. You could see somebody that's 100% suffering, and being able to recognize that, to me, that may be suffering, and to them, that's normal. That is their life. You think about people that live in the desert compared to people that live in polar regions. It's suffering. You, Pam, when with light and everything else, you can't go live in England. It's suffering to you. It's not going to be pleasant. Yet, some people that live in cold can't stand to have the sunlight that much. It's not good for them. So these energies, being able to strip that away and look at it as pure energy and see that what's coming through is beneficial for that person, even if that is quote unquote a negative. There's a lesson in it and there's a blessing in it. And a friend of mine called it a blessing at one time. That you may be experiencing something that may be very, very traumatic, but there's a lesson in it for you. The energy is bringing you a blessing that you then have a choice of whether to accept, whether to work with, whether to recognize it, or to fight against it and come back to that bashing, situation.
Well, and I think, I keep getting struck over and over again as you're talking about, and I don't know if we all need to go off and take classes in, I'm going to try to pronounce it correctly this time, Aikido.
Yes.
About the fact that we need to be able, or it would be beautiful to see both sides and not a wrong and a right, or a good and a bad in these times when we're in conflict with one another. And of course, we've been in conflict with one another in time immemorial, but wow, is there a lot to learn